All right, guys, how are we doing tonight? We doing all right tonight? If you are on the east coast of America, it is 12 a.m. If you are on the west coast, I think it's 9. That's my suspicion. But yes, I'm excited to get things going here. I know this is Christian Watson after dark, but it's not that kind of Christian Watson after dark. Oh Jesus. All right, let's see what we got here. So we're going to watch the full Tucker Carlson Donald Trump interview, start to finish. And before we watch, I'll add some context here. Um, so I think that it's rather ingenious for Donald Trump to do this move. If you want to beat the establishment or the established order, what better way to beat the establishment or the established order than to quite literally not go to their event? So I think that there's a genius to that. And I also think that the growth of alternative media really, and excuse me if I seem distracted. I'm trying to find, because I had the feed pulled up. I'm trying to find the feed right now for that interview. It's 10 p.m. Oh, aren't you lucky? Aren't you lucky? It's 10 p.m. Aren't you lucky? Aren't you lucky? But also, many of you will know it's very rare that I do this. I don't normally stream at all, and I certainly don't stream at this time of hour. So the fact that I streamed, and the fact that I streamed at this time of hour, excuse me, I feel a calling. I feel like there's something a little bit higher than me that's calling me and pushing me towards this. And I think that we're on the cusp of something amazing. And so I want to capture that moment and not ignore that moment. Okay, I found the feed. So that's why I'm doing this. That's precisely why I'm doing this. So, yes, we're going to do this. One second. Letting these ads play, then we will hop right on. Before we get towards this interview, I want all of you to, if any of you have any questions, have any thoughts to give me before I get on with this about the debate. Yeah, no, so look, we need to give good content. Good content is so important. And America right now is in a drought. We're in a drought. We're in an intellectual, I think we're in a spiritual, intellectual drought. And that's where I try to come in to help out. Uh, I'm no messiah, of course, but um, so I actually come in to help out. Did I finish my undergrad philosophy degree? I did. I did. Funny story about that. Okay, so most of my philosophical education comes from outside of the university. Because my university, I didn't follow the script my university set for me. My university wanted to primarily focus on the traditional history of philosophy that is spelled out generally in Western education, starting with Plato, ending with like the 20th century. And I kind of veered from that path, and I focused my energy towards areas of philosophy that interested me, in particular the 18th century natural law, Enlightenment, liberal thinkers. They really interest me, and all their sort of cousins. And the Stoics, of course, in ancient Rome, interested me as well. So I cultivated a habit of independent study, and I applied that towards my pursuit of philosophy. So yes, I finished it, but I didn't really finish it with edified. I finished it because I wanted to get out of university. And so, to be frank with you, I don't even think I put much effort in my philosophy classes at university because they just weren't worth it. To be frank with you, no, no. This is look. This right here is gonna be my this is my career right here. Content creation. I don't care what platform, whether it's Rumble, Odyssey, YouTube, or on all of those, or whether it's X, Twitter. I'm doing content creation for the rest of my life. Maybe not just content creation, but this right here is going to be my career, and I'm going to fight to make it my career. I'm not going to. The academy. Here's one thing. I had a lot of professors try to stoke me to go do a PhD. There's no need for me to do that. The academy is overrun by politics. It's overrun by ideologies that are anti-rational. It's overrun by cowardice on behalf of many of the professors in the academy. There's no reason for me to partake in that nonsense, that foolishness. No, thank you. I think that, and really, I think that I'm more effective doing this than I would be teaching in classes at university, writing some paper that only 5 people read, and trying to go through the rat race, going from adjunct professor to full professor to tenure. And a lot of professors actually lose themselves in their character and their values and their morals on the pursuit to power, on the pursuit to climbing up the ladder. And that's not okay. And that can happen, and that can happen in any institution, but it's especially prevalent in academia. And just primarily, I don't want to do any more schooling. I want to just do independent study, and I want to just pursue my own path in life. So I have no interest in doing any more schooling. So no professor for me, no teaching. If I teach, it'll be in this medium right here. So, and I'm happier doing this. I wasn't happy in university. I mean, I love with all of you. Since all of you, this is an intimate crowd, I love with all of you. I wasn't happy in university. I was actually just making it. I was struggling to get by in terms of the mental and emotional capital I spent on the entire ordeal. I was much happier pursuing my own studies and then discussing those studies with like a friend or two that understood what I was trying to talk about. Even if they disagreed with me philosophically, if they understood what I was trying to talk about and they appreciated it, that's what made me the happiest. The university never made me happy. And I do believe happiness isn't the only end goal of life. Obviously, I don't believe that. But happiness should be a part of a good life. If you want to have a good life, you ought to be happy. You have 40, 50 years on this earth before you perish. If you're my age, 20, the typical lifespan for me would be like 30, 40, 50 more years. Maybe it'll be longer with the advent of modern medicine, but everyone's going to die soon, one day. And so while you're still living, while there's breath coursing through your lungs, you might as well make the most of the time you have here. And, if your passion is teaching and at the academy, you go for it, man. And that's good. If your passion is charity, go for it. If your passion is welding or mechanical engineering, go for it. If your passion is media, go for it. My passion sure as hell was in university. and actually, I won't belabor this point, but a lot of people who are in the academy and who are very academically astute end up resenting people outside of the academy, and they end up losing a sense of who they are. They end up losing a sense of what it means to be a humble person. And I never fell into that trap, but I saw it displayed so many times. You've no clue how many people I saw who would tout their academic accolades in one breath, but in the other breath, they would be contemptuous towards those without those accolades. And that kind of intelligentsia has really assumed control over Washington. It's really assumed control over a lot of our politics in this nation. And it's really made a class of people resent those in power, which is one of the reasons why Oliver Anthony, some random guy from Virginia, managed to get a feature in a nationally televised presidential debate due to a song that he wrote, which captured this rage. So no, my goal is to be a YouTuber, a content creator. I encourage everyone who has a message and everyone who has a good message and a good voice to do the same thing. It really is, I think, one of the most fulfilling career paths you can take. And they don't teach you in school how to do this job. They don't teach you in school how to do this job. You have to learn it yourself. They definitely don't teach you in school. This entire thing breaks the paradigm. All right, guys. I know I spent about 9 minutes talking about life and everything. Let me not hold you guys up. I know it's late, and I appreciate all of you who are here, who are watching, who are being supportive. So allow me to get to this interview. But just to answer your question, yeah, no, I don't think I'm going to be doing the academy anytime soon, but or ever. Nope. Can't do it. All right. Let us get this. All righty. There we go. Now, as I mentioned, I'll go over a few things with those who are just joining us. This interview is especially significant because Trump, even though he assumed the reins of the established political order for a short period of time, although I would argue during his administration those reins were taken away from him as well, forcefully and in a manner of subterfuge. Even though he took those reins, he is now effectively pushing back against that same kind of animal that he was trying to wrestle during his presidency by refusing to go to one of the events, the cornerstone events of the establishment, and instead holding his own event with a man who just also bucked the establishment and started his own internet show, which has gotten more views than he ever got on Fox News. So I think that this is just a merging. This interview is a merger of forces, anti-establishment forces that have serious weight behind them. And it really inspires me as an independent content creator to see just how powerful this merger is. So I think 100% this was the right move for Trump in the sense that Trump made a decision which paints him truly as an anti-establishment figure. I'm not sure you could take that claim seriously if he was willing to partake in both the rules and the format of the establishment wanted to partake in. Remember, to be on a debate stage tonight, you had to make the oath that you would sign away your autonomy and who you would choose as president because you would have undying fealty to whoever the eventual nominee is. That's the reason why I refuse to partake in institutional party politics, because my fealty is to first principles and first principles only. Politics be damned. So I don't really believe in this idea of party loyalty. And the idea of party loyalty has actually been one of the biggest low quality ideas, part and parcel to the American experience. And we really need to look at that. I've known several folks who are agents of the electoral system, who work within the electoral system. And I tell you, the electoral system is much different than the media system. The system that we're in right now, the space we're in right now, is much more different than the electoral system. It's a matrix of moneyed interests, of cliched talking points, of established powers, and other entities that direct the flow of elections and ultimately the processes of governance, as opposed to the people elected to represent and run those processes themselves. So, all I'd say this, that we're in a very unique moment right now when it comes to how information is transmitted, and also to how certain politicians can fight back against the system that tries to swallow them up whenever they get into Congress, if they aren't too careful. So, without further ado, let's actually try to watch this interview. I will be stopping. I have no idea how long this video will go on, but I don't care because I believe in this message. I believe in our mission, and I believe we have something beautiful planned for us here on this channel, in this movement, in this community, and so we're going to do it. Before I get started, though, like this video, comment, subscribe if you're new here, share the link far and wide. Let's see if we can get up to 20 concurrent viewers. That's my standard for this stream. If not, we're good. But 20 would be nice. And let's see if we can also get a good engaged chat. So without further ado, let us begin watching the Tucker Carlson Donald Trump interview. And you guys let me know if you can hear it or not.
Mr. President, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Why aren't you at the Fox News debate tonight in Milwaukee?
Well, a lot of people have been asking me that, and many people said you shouldn't do them, but you see the polls have come out, and I'm leading by 50 and 60 points. And, some of them are at 1 and 0 and 2. And I'm saying, do I sit there for an hour or 2 hours, whatever it's going to be, and get harassed by people that shouldn't even be running for president. Should I be doing that? And a network that isn't particularly friendly to me, frankly. You know, they were backing Ron DeSanctimonious like crazy, and now they've given up on him. I mean, it's a lost cause. It reminded me very much of 2016. You know, in 2016, I went through the same stuff and had to fight them all the way. And then they became very friendly after I won, or just about when I was winning. But I just felt it would be more appropriate not to do the debate. I don't think it's right to do it. If you're leading by 50, 60, I have one problem leading by 70 points. And I'm saying, why am I doing it? And I'm going to have 8 people, 10 people, whoever made the debate. I don't know how many it is, but I'm going to have all these people screaming at me, shouting questions at me, all of which I love answering, I love doing, but it doesn't make sense to do them. So I've taken a pass, as you probably noticed.
Well,
Okay. Let's stop there. So let's understand Trump's reasoning here. It doesn't seem, yes, on this we can actually. Let me do that. Let me know if this is better. Actually, let me know if this is better.
See, I have one problem leading by 70 points.
That should be much better. Yes, on that one we can. That should be much, much better. All right. And let me know if it's not, and I'll address it in a second. But let's talk about what he just said there. So Trump's calculation here is not really, he says that it wouldn't be right to do it. So obviously he has some kind of moral calculation in his head. We understand that Donald Trump, he's a doer, not a thinker. And this is one of his appeals, right? Was that instead of actually rationalizing and having these long drawn-out policies that only certain people could understand, he was able to come in and level with folks, perhaps in a really crude way, but in a way that was effective at the time. And that kind of shot him up to be the popular authority at the time. And so when he says that I'm leading by 50%, why would I do this debate? What he's really saying is, I have a mandate by virtue of my position, by virtue of my approval, to be isolated, to be insulated rather, from certain kinds of competition from within my own camp. And when you think of it, when you really think of it, when you actually think of it, that perspectives makes sense if you're operating in his worldview, where the mandate comes from what the people want and how big your following and your foundation is. Now, on the other hand, if you believe that ideas are refined and strengthened in fire by tension, constructive tension, of course, not just vain tension, because not all tension is constructive. If you really believe that, then you would think the logical conclusion of that belief would be for you to submit yourself to questioning and Socratic dialogue. But again, that's not Trump's interest, because Trump is a doer. And there's a virtue in this kind of thinking, and there's also a big downside. The downside is you remain cemented in your beliefs without ever questioning them, which could lead you to falsehood. The upside is it's a kind of conviction that leaves you unshakable when those in power or those who oppose you wish to tear you down from your perch. And this is one of the reasons that despite all those indictments, despite all these attacks, despite everything that's been thrown out against him, Donald Trump is still in a very strong position. Most candidates would have been destroyed by the murmurance of an indictment, much less several indictments across several jurisdictions by several very overzealous prosecutors. So that's something to really consider there. How does Trump view the legitimacy of political mandates in relationship to how he interacts with ideas? That's a very important question to ask. I think it will help inform how we proceed in understanding this conversation. Let us continue. Let me know if the volume is okay.
And I'm saying, why am I doing it? And I'm going to have 8 people, 10 people, whoever made the debate. I don't know how many it is, but I'm going to have all these people screaming at me, shouting questions at me, all of which I love answering, I love doing, but it doesn't make sense to do them. So I've taken a pass, as you probably noticed.
Well, I did. I'm grateful that you did. It's interesting, though, because you spent a lot of your career in television.
Yeah.
you had a top show in television on NBC. But you don't feel the need now running for president to do television, obviously. Do you think television is declining?
Well, according to a poll that I guess we just saw, it just came out where it's down like 35%, but I think they were referring to cable. I think cable's down because it's lost credibility. MSNBC, or as they say, MSDNC, is so bad. It's so wrong what they write and what they do and what they say. It's fake news, as I said. I think I came up with that term. I hope I did, because it's a good one. It's not tough enough anymore. It's corrupt news. Really what you do is call it corrupt news, but somehow that doesn't play as nicely, but it is corrupt news. So you have MSNBC and you have CNN, who's absolutely doing no ratings at all. I mean, they're dead, but they're doing none because they don't have credibility. They really don't have credibility. Fox is way down, as you know, and the good old days are long ago. I will say this, it could come back, but they just don't have a lot of credibility, Tucker. You know that perhaps better than anybody.
Okay, so there's an interesting point you made here. Now, Tucker's question was about cable, particularly. It wasn't necessarily about, rather, the legitimacy of news outlets. It was about cable. But I think both go hand in hand, and both can actually offer us some insight into the progress of human evolution. Cable came about in an era, now some of you are a little bit older than me, so you probably remember when cable came about, but it came about in an era where man's interaction with information was static, unchanging. There wasn't much growth, wasn't much dynamic potential. It was really just very slow. And that's one of the reasons why CNN, the cable news network, was so novel and so inventive for the time that it was built in like the 80s by Ted Turner, because it went along with that sort of static human interaction with information. You turn on the TV, you have a few set channels. You don't have much choice or customability. Like we have channel guides today, we have all kinds of stuff today that we didn't really have. You didn't really have back in the 80s when this stuff was coming out. And you are stuck with a few things. That's why CNN was so revolutionary. It was a lack of choice, lack of dynamism, and human interaction with information. Then you fast forward 20, 30 years, and you see the internet age fully blossom and mature into what it was meant to be, this sort of way of facilitating human communication that goes beyond being a mere medium, like you have a car helping you travel. It literally becomes a part of the fabric of life itself. The internet and the digital medium has become a part of the fabric of human interaction itself, not just an interface, but almost a framework, which is quite terrifying. That's quite terrifying if you think about that. The internet is literally a framework for human life that in some cases even orders human life. Think about that, my friends. The internet is a framework which orders human life. Let that sit down in your soul for a second. What does that mean? We're going somewhere good tonight, guys. What does that mean? Well, it means that how human relationships are viewed without the digital interface in the physical world, we'll say, is vastly different to how human relationships are viewed in the digital world. That is to say, we don't see each other the same entirely interacting through a computer or interacting through an app as we do in physical reality. This is why you've seen things like cyberbullying and anonymous death threats and doxing and all kind of terrors that arise from the shield the internet age has provided so many people. We see so many of them become prevalent because it literally, the internet is both a social antisocial medium. It's a social antisocial medium. Social antisocial. It brings you together with people in a manner that is not conducive to long-lasting relationships if used the wrong way. Now, it can be used the right way. And I can say that I have had so many friendships, long-lasting to this day friendships, from folks I've met online that I cherish to the end of my life. I will cherish it in my life. Having said that, not everyone uses that tool in the same way. It's sometimes used to destroy. But that's what happens. Going back to the cable question that Carlson asked. When human interaction with information is no longer static, but it's dynamic, there's so many possibilities it can go. There's so much room for potential, so much room for growth. And we should take that very seriously. We should take that very, 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 very seriously. And I certainly take that very seriously. So that's one thing. Second thing, on media companies themselves, like CNN, NBC, ABC. Well, back in the olden days of information, where stasis doesn't even begin to describe our interaction with information, the 60s, it was NBC, ABC, CBS. They had a monopoly over the information that was shared in this country. And Walter Cronkite was the face of this illusion called objective journalism. Now, the fact is, Cronkite was a teetotaler for the Vietnam War. He was not an objective journalist. He had the aesthetic of one, but he was not one. People need to relearn their history. But anyway, he had this appearance of the objective journalist. And this is a period of information, quite literally, where the biggest monopolies over information had complete control over how it was distributed. And the FBI, during its COINTELPRO operations in the late 60s, early 70s, quite literally used the very few avenues of information to manipulate narratives, manipulate ideals within the minds of the public, and bend those ideals towards their information psychological warfare campaigns. So we've seen that when human interaction with information is static, the potential for abuse becomes much higher. So I don't think it's the fact that these companies are getting less popular. It's that people are just realizing that you can't, when you have an era of dynamic interaction with information, that same era will not complement old world forms of interaction with information. And sometimes you have to have that reality thrust into your face. I mean no innuendo when I say that. I promise you, I mean no innuendo. In order to realize its truth. That's my music. Let's keep going. We're not even. This is going to be a long. I'm not sure I keep you here all night. I'm sorry, but I'm flowing tonight, and the ideas are coming tonight. So excuse me if I go on these long tangents, but we're getting somewhere. Okay, I promise you, we're getting somewhere. Let's keep going.
Buddy, I think it was a terrible move getting rid of you. You were number one on television, and all of a sudden we're doing this interview, but we'll get bigger ratings using this crazy forum that you're using than probably the debate or competition.
When you say there are people on stage who shouldn't be running for president, who do you mean?
Well, I don't want to really use names, but it wouldn't matter too much. A guy like, I call him Ada Hutchinson. It's Asa, but I call him Ada.
Why do you call him Ada?
I could tell you, but I don't want to get myself in a little trouble. But he's weak and pathetic, and he was, I never understood the guy, never knew him. He was the governor of Arkansas, not a very popular guy. I don't know how but that state is such a great state. The people are so incredible in that state, and they love me and I love them. How does this guy get elected governor of Arkansas? But he's nasty always, and has been. A guy like Chris Christie, the guy left with a 8%, think of it, 8% approval rating in New Jersey. Now he's running for president, and he runs solely on the basis, oh, let's get Trump. He's like a savage maniac. He's like a lunatic. And that's all he talks about. His poll numbers are very, very low. He's about 2%.
What's he like? You know him well.
No, I've been friendly with him over the years, but I couldn't give him a job because I just never trusted him very much. I was just never one of his people that really trusted him. I never gave him the job. And that's one of the reasons he feels so hurt and so betrayed. And I understand that. I really do. I understand it. But I never gave him, he wanted to be different things. He was looking at different elements of the administration. And I decided I didn't want to do it. And now I'm glad I did, because you see, but we had some great people. I had great people. We'll have even better people if we do this, because now I know Washington. Before I didn't know Washington. But guys like Bill Barr were terrible. I mean, they were, I would say, Bushies. I say that with respect to the Bush family, but they were Bushies, and it doesn't work out for us.
It was clear, this is kind of far afield, but it was just interesting.
No, yeah, let's address that. William Barr, Bill Barr, used to actually, well, he still is a fixture for the establishment and the deep state. If you look at his history, and you look at what he has done in the past, I'm blanking on some examples right now, but I promise you they'll come to me later in the stream. This is very important. He has been behind some of the biggest sort of establishment type narratives as it relates to the legal world. And the fact that Trump even hired him has confounded so many legal commentators, especially those in MAGA world, because you talk about the anti-establishment person. Barr was quite literally married to the hip to the establishment. So that's a very important point to make. Also, it's also another important point to make that sometimes in politics, people do things out of a motivation to get back at you for something you did to them. Now, that is derivative largely of a view of politics that says that politics is not a process of governing a sovereign nation built upon particular ideas that constitute the moral foundation and legitimacy for governance. But politics is instead a game of power, a game of conflict, a game of chess, in which one side loses and the other side does not lose. One side wins. This is the view of politics given to us by the progressives, by the leftists, and many of their wild social theories. I can give you one. The second wave feminists, their calling card after the successes of the first wave feminists, who embraced the biological reality of womanhood, something that is absent from today's modern way fourth wave feminists, who embrace the idea that equal rights is important, who actually were quite conservative in many of their sentiments. I think that the first wave feminist movement was followed by the temperance movement as well, which was pretty conservative, even though I didn't really agree with how they went about trying to stop folks from drinking alcohol, but that's neither here nor there. Then you have the second wave feminists that say, oh, no. Perhaps there's no need to separate the personal from the political. Perhaps what women experience in the household, what women experience as they relate to men, their husbands, the patriarchy, is exactly a microcosm of what happens in society. Therefore, the personal is political. The private realm and the public realm are one and the same. This is the premise of second wave feminism. This is the premise. And when you endorse this premise, politics becomes a game of conflict, a game of domination and subjugation, not a game of restoration and governance. And when that happens, I mentioned politics is the science of power. Power becomes used in a way in which some people get hurt and others don't get hurt. Power becomes corrupted in its use. And by being corrupted in its use, like the One Ring from Sauron, Lord of the Rings, the person's soul becomes darkened. That is where we're at. And so there's something very serious to this notion that Chris Christie was offered positions that Trump just didn't give. Well, Chris Christie wanted positions that Trump just didn't give him. And that rejection sent him into a fury, which was unshakable. Because politics is a game of conflict. Now, it is true that this didn't begin in the 60s with the second wave feminists. But I think it got worse when there were social ideologies empowering political forces to continue to treat politics as a game of power and conflict, as opposed to a process that is specific, that is limited, and that is based on first principles. So Trump is, again, you can get so much fruit from this kind of stuff if you guys listen carefully. Trump's making some good points that if you think about them and you deduce from them, you'll end up in a good place, I promise you. You just have to think very carefully and very precisely about things. So yeah, it's very interesting. And Asa Hutchinson, I said at the debate tonight, Asa Hutchinson was absolutely the worst person at that debate tonight, without a shadow of a doubt. There's no principles. There was no real arguments. He literally advocated for a form of state cultism, state worship, which we can't have. Americans question authority. We don't worship authority. That's antithetical to our ethos. There's just so many reasons why Asa Hutchinson was just so horrible tonight. So I think that the mockery is probably well deserved, isn't it? All right, let's keep going.
I read Barr's account of his time. He wrote a book about it,
Right.
His autobiography. And in it, he lies about Jeffrey.
Sometimes the lows of bipolar depression feel darkest before dawn. With Caplyta, there's a chance to let the
Jeffrey Epstein's death clearly lies. Do you think Epstein killed himself sincerely?
I don't know. I will say that, he was a fixture in Palm Beach.
Yeah.
I don't know what Barr said about it either. I have no idea what he said. What did he say? He killed himself, probably?
He said he killed himself and that they were going to do this investigation. They never did the investigation. It's never been public.
Well,
and they hid it. And why are they doing that? And clearly Barr knew. But why would Bill Barr be covering up the death of Jeffrey Epstein?
Bill Barr didn't do an investigation on the election fraud either. Okay. He said he did, and he pretended he did, but he didn't. McSwain,
Okay, let's talk about this. Bill Barr was the Attorney General whose functions, the DOJ's functions, quite literally had supervision over Epstein when he was killed. Well, excuse me. That slipped out. When he killed himself, in air quotes. So, there's been no accountability for Bill Barr. There's been no accountability for the corrections officers that were on site that night. There's been no accountability for the prison that held Epstein. There's been no answers. The footage from that cell block has not been released. And Bill Barr did not lift a finger to get answers. Now, would a good person whose mind is oriented towards the truth and conduct is oriented towards ethical behavior refuse to investigate the death of one of the most well-connected pedophiles in the history of the country, in the history of the world even, who had an international child network ring that possibly included many famous world leaders? A moral person does not do that. A fixer, someone who works for the established order and tries to hide their warts, they do that. That's precisely the nature of person that Bill Barr is. And I have no problem saying that. And so I think it's very good that Trump calls him out on this. Very, very good.
The U.S. attorney in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, said Barr just wouldn't let him do it. It was crazy. Barr became so petrified, so frightened of being impeached. They were going to impeach him. I don't know if you remember it.
Yeah.
It's not a big moment in history. But they said, we're going to impeach. They play a much rougher game, the left, the lunatics. And they were going to impeach Bill Barr. And he was petrified. Now, how do you not get impeached? Don't do any of this stuff. But he didn't do the job there. I don't know what he did with Epstein, but possibly he didn't.
Do you think it's
that.
possible that Epstein was killed?
Oh, sure, it's possible. I don't really believe. I think he probably committed suicide. He had a life with, beautiful homes and beautiful everything, and he all of a sudden he's incarcerated and not doing very well. I would say that he did, but there are those people. There are many people. I think you're one of them, right? But a lot of people think that he was killed. He knew a lot on a lot of people.
He was killed.
You think so?
I think the closer you look, I'm not a conspiracy person at all. I believe everything I hear. But yeah, the closer you look into it, the Attorney General of the United States, your Attorney General clearly lied about the Epstein death.
Yeah,
and
he was.
Why?
He was certainly. It wasn't well done. They had no cameras. They had no anything. Everybody was sleeping, and a case could be made. Look, I'm not going to get involved in it, but I can tell you a case could be made either way. But it certainly wasn't the most well-run place.
So the reason I'm asking you is I'm looking at the trajectory since 2015 when you got into politics, for real, and then won. It started with protests against you, massive protests,
Right.
organized protests by the left, and then it moved to impeachment twice,
Right.
and now indictment. I mean, the next stage is violence. Are you worried that they're going to try and kill you? Why wouldn't they try and kill you? Honestly,
They're savage animals. They are people that are sick, really sick. You have great people in the Democrat Party. You have great people that are Democrats. Most of the people in our country are fantastic, and I'm representing everybody. I'm not just Republicans or conservatives. I represent everybody. I'm the president of everybody. But I've seen what they do. I've seen the lengths that they go to when they make up the Russia. When that's exposed and they go down, and Barr should have gone after them, and other people should have gone after, and they did very late because the Durham report came out. It was fairly good. It could have been a lot tougher, I guess, but it was fairly good. But it explained how corrupt it was. I'll tell you who did a great job was the Inspector General Horowitz. He did a phenomenal report. You didn't have to go to Durham. He did it on Comey and on, I guess, McCabe and some others. And it was a vicious, it was basically a true report, how bad they are. But these people are sick people. These are people that I think they hate our country. You want to know the truth. When you see open borders, when you see these policies that they have, and so many other things, it's so sad to see. We have a country that's very fragile right now. I've never seen, I will say, look, I ran in 16, which was 15, but I ran in 16, election in 16, and there was tremendous spirit. In 20, there was even more spirit. We got millions and millions more votes. It wasn't even a contest. People said, well, what'd you think of 20? I said, we did much better. We did. You got to base it on the number of votes. We got many more votes in 20 than we did in 16. But the election was rigged. It was a rigged election. And with COVID, they used COVID to cheat in a lot of different things. And we have so much on it. It's like so easy. But we had judges that didn't want to look. We had people didn't want to get involved. They could he's a conspiracy theorist if you say anything about the election. But
let me just affirm for the YouTube censors that the election of 2020 was perfectly fine. Everything was up to snuff. Everything was perfectly reasonable. Nothing was suspicious at all. Everyone should have trust in the processes. The official narrative is absolutely 100% true. If you question that, you're a crazy conspiracy theorist. And if you continue to question that, you are not associated with me whatsoever, because I am on the right side of history. I am on the side of democracy. Democracy dies in darkness, yada, yada. I mean, I'm reciting all of the talking points. So yeah, just making it very clear for everybody in the world, everybody watching, that democracy dies in darkness, and we have to trust our democracy, and we have to make sure that everything is not questioned. If you question democracy, you question law enforcement, if you question the federal government, you're being evil, you're being wrong, you're being conspiracy theorist, you're far right, everything's wrong with you, okay? The fact that there are people in this country that actually believe what I just said should scare you more than anything else in the world.
I have never seen spirit like there is right now. Even coming down here, just the people on the road that are just absolutely going crazy. And the reason is, I think they like me, and I know they love my policies. I hope they like me too. A lot of people say they don't like me, but they like my policies. I think they like me. But I have never seen spirit like it is right now. And the reason is because crooked Joe Biden is so bad. He's the worst president in the history of our country. I don't think he's going to make it to the gate, but you never know. But he's a corrupt person, so corrupt that I took the name off Hillary. I don't do.
Okay, not the worst president. Okay, and when Trump says this a lot, he's not the worst president. I could think of several other presidents that are worse. Woodrow Wilson, probably the worst president in American history. Woodrow Wilson helped hasten the destruction of the reference to America's foundations and our policies and our social institutions as well. He was he was a monster of the progressive era, right? FDR is pretty horrible as well. People will congratulate FDR for nationalizing the economy, imposing rations on people, creating the welfare state, doing everything else, because apparently after he did all of that, there was some kind of economic boom. But if you're actually an astute student of history, and the student of economics should realize that America boomed after World War II because we were literally the only economy standing. The entire world, almost the entire world, certainly all of Europe, had been flattened by the bombs and the fighting. And so when you're the main supplier and everyone else has the demand, by osmosis, you're going to have a successful economy. So no, our economy was not successful because Roosevelt nationalized everything and imposed rations on people and created an office of wartime propaganda, which quite literally hijacked Disney, hijacked newspapers to propagandize people into supporting the war effort, but called people Nazis if they didn't refuse to drive. He literally said, if you don't control your gas output, you're riding with Hitler. That's evil. I don't care what the situation is. That's absolutely, positively, 100% pure evil. So, you've had worse presidents than Biden, unfortunately. I don't even think he's in the top 10. He's bad. Trust me, he's bad. But if you look through American history, there are absolutely worse presidents than Joe Biden. Keep going.
Two people at one time. I took the crooked Hillary and I retired the name. That was a good day for her. I bet she was very happy. And I used it for Joe because it's Crooked Joe. But Joe is really...
But you don't think he's going to make it to November of 2020?
Well, I think he's worse mentally than he is physically. And physically, he's not exactly a triathlete or any kind of an athlete. You look at him, he can't walk to the helicopter. He walks. He can't lift his feet out of the grass. You know, it's only 2 inches at the White House, right? It's not... But you watch him and it looks like he's walking on toothpicks. So, and then you see him on the beach where he can't lift a chair. You know, those chairs are meant to be light, right? They're like 2 ounces. You lift them up. He can't lift the chair. He can't walk to the chair. And I don't know what they're doing with the beach. You know, this beach is seeming to play a big role, but they love pictures of him on the beach. I think he looks terrible on the beach. He looks terrible on the beach.
Skinny legs.
Well, he can't walk through the sand. You know, sand is not that easy to walk through, but when he walks through it, he can't walk through the sand. And there's somebody in there that thinks he looks fabulous at the beach. I think he looks horrible at the beach. Plus, the beach doesn't represent what a president's supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be working. You're supposed to be getting us out of that horrible, horrible war that we're very much involved in with Russia and Ukraine. You could do that. You could do that very easily. I believe you could do that I don't believe he could do it because he's just incompetent. But that's a war that should end immediately, not because of one side or the other, because hundreds of thousands of people are being killed. Can you imagine you're in an apartment house and rockets are going into that building and blowing it up and knocking it down? And why should anybody, human beings, these are human, whether they're Russian or Ukrainian or whatever they are, it's got to be stopped. And it can be stopped very easily. It would have never started. If I were president, it would have never started.
So back to Biden, I'm interested. So you think he's failing? He obviously is failing. I think it's clear to everybody. But that would make Kamala Harris.
Well, this is how YouTubers make money, guys. It's how one of the ways to make money. So if you see ads on my videos, please watch it. And thank you.
The candidate?
Well, not really. I mean, I guess they'd have maybe a free-for-all. A lot of people say she has to remain for certain reasons, the candidate. She has to. I don't think that's true, actually. I don't think that other people would stand for it. She has some bad moments. Her moments are almost as bad as his. I think his are worse, actually.
Yeah.
But
She seems pretty senile, too.
she speaks in rhyme. You know, it's weird. It's weird. But she has bad moments. And
In rhyme? What do you...
well, the way she talks, the bus will go here and then the bus will go there because that's what buses do. And it's weird. The whole thing is weird. This is not a president of the United States future. And I think they probably have some kind of a primary and other people will get involved.
Okay, guys. Here's my thing. Here's my complaint. Trump will be who he is. But a nation can't sustain itself through this kind of political analysis. And I'm going to be critical a little bit of Trump here. I've yet to see him really dive into the substance of why he thinks our country is going wrong. and why he thinks the Biden administration is an inferior political force to what he could offer. He'll say, if the war was happening, if I was president, the war wouldn't happen. Okay, why not? What would you do? How would you do it? How would you prevent it? And Carlson isn't really pushing too hard on this particular topic with Trump. So that does a disservice, in my opinion. You can't sustain a nation like this. You can't do it. And of course, look, Trump's going to be who he is. He's not a details-oriented person. But I think after everything he's been through, he should certainly be more willing to look at the details. Because not looking at the details is what got him Christopher William, Bill Barr, and Lindsey Graham, certainly, John Bolton, and Jeff Sessions, and all these people who were fundamentally rotten and bad for his attempt to MAGA, make America great again. So again, this brand of politics is not going to sustain the country. It's just going to make us. It's not going to give us fruit, so to speak. So, yeah, Kamala Harris sounds weird when she talks about things. She doesn't really have much intelligence. Okay, yeah, we all know that. But how is that going to help us address the issues that America faces? Just a question.
Newsom, right? I mean,
could be. I mean, I always got along well with him, believe it or not. But could be him, could be somebody else. He's got a big load on his shoulders because you look at California, what's happened. But I don't know if the American people really, the people that vote for him, I don't even know if they care. You look at so many of the things that are going on, and people don't seem to be. In the old days, if you had a bad record, it meant a lot. Today, if you have a bad record, it doesn't really mean anything. He looks good. He's a nice looking guy, speaks well. But Biden, every time you watch him talking, it's like he's walking on eggs. You're waiting for him to collapse. And he almost always does. And I got to know the leaders of all of the countries, essentially, but the big ones. And the bigger, the tougher the leader. It's like sort of, I guess maybe that's the way it's supposed to be. But I got to know President Xi of China and Putin and Kim Jong-un, North Korea. Did a great job with North Korea, kept us out of a nuclear war. We would have 40,000 dead soldiers right now. They'd drop a nuke right on top of the military base. But we have 40,000 soldiers over there. And I did great. I got along with them great. That's a positive. The press said, he said nice things about Kim Jong-un. I also said horrible things at the beginning. Horrible enough that he wanted to talk. And we talked, and we met in Singapore. We met actually twice. And we had unbelievable meetings. I know him very well. We were in great shape with him.
What do you think he and Xi and Putin think of Biden?
I think they can't believe it. I think they probably say this is some kind of a system. They had great respect for our country. They respected me. They had great respect for our country when I was there. Every one of them. Look, if you go to North Korea, you take a look at what happened. The Olympics was dead. South Korea spent billions on the Olympics. Nobody was going to go. They didn't want to get blown up. They called me and they said, "We are."
All right, so we'll talk about that in a second. David, welcome to our little show here, our late night stream. Thank you guys so much for being here. All of you that are here, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. As you guys can see, I am most certainly. I'm in and out of. I'm a little fatigued, but we're going to keep going on for at least for a little bit longer. I can't promise we'll make it to the whole interview because how many more minutes we have? God, okay, yeah, over 30. I can't promise we'll make it to the whole interview, but I will get us as close as we can before I go to sleep. So let's talk about what he just said there about Biden and about the leaders in different countries like North Korea and China. The reason I don't think it quite matters to Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping who the president is because most presidents fall in line with the liberal international world hegemony directed by NATO, the Atlantic Council, and the UN. Most presidents don't really break the US from that mold, except Trump. Trump did. Trump began asking NATO, okay, you need to pay up. We're not going to be giving you all this free money for you to fund your social welfare systems and counting us for defense. He began really rustling people's feathers. He took a very aggressive approach towards keeping America in peace, a very aggressive approach to ensuring that America's strategic objectives were achieved. And he largely, in my lifetime, most certainly, Trump is the best foreign policy president we've had in my lifetime. Most certainly, without a shadow of a doubt. I was born in 2000, so we've had Bush, we've had Obama, we've had Trump, we've had Biden, and out of all of them, Trump is most definitely the best foreign policy president we've had in terms of maintaining peace and in terms of making, hold on, I just saw this. Get vaccinated, boosted and wearing out. Wow. Part of me thinks it's some kind of troll operation. But yeah, no, you're definitely on the wrong channel, honey. Sorry. You have to go. So, if presidents are just agents of the global order that currently dictates American foreign policy, then what does it matter to Xi Jinping or Kim Jong-un who the president is? Unless they refuse to be an agent of that order, and Trump largely refused to be an agent of that order. Now, I wish he would have went further. I wish Donald Trump would have disbanded American involvement in the UN. I wish Donald Trump would have had us leave NATO. I wish Donald Trump would have had us do several things that would have permanently divorced us from the internationalist curse that American foreign policy has been under for so long. I wish he would have. He didn't do all of that. I wish he would have. And a true president with courage would do all of those things. So that's my perspective. Let's keep going. Again, I can't promise we'll get to 25 minutes. We'll get half the way through the interview. I can't promise we'll get to the whole way through. I can't promise that because I want to give you guys the best content possible. We're almost coming up on an hour here anyway, so you'll get to have plenty of content to watch if you watch the video back. And also, I must say, there's a watch party in our Discord. If you're not in our Discord, I would most certainly appreciate you joining our Discord. If someone can put the link in, if not, I'll put the link in myself. We are a community of thinkers, a community, I think one of the best communities on the internet when it comes to political content. We can, no matter what your beliefs are, as long as you are respectful, you have a place in my pensive community, and you will hopefully be a part of the revolution of the mind. So thank you all for being here. You can join the Discord at that link right there. All right, let's keep going on here.
Going to let the Olympics proceed. This is North Korea. I said, you should go into the Olympics. Put your athletes in. It wasn't like, they were big on athletes because,
famine.
But they went in and they actually participated. And within about 2 days, the entire thing was sold out. And if it wasn't me, that would have never happened. But I got along very well with him, and that's a positive thing. He does have massive nuclear power, by the way. And if Hillary would have gotten in, or if the Obama thought process continued, it would have been a nuclear war, absolutely, with North Korea. He was expecting to go into a war, and it would have been a nuclear war.
So do you think the rest of the world looks on at Biden and thinks someone else has got to be running the government?
Well, somebody else has to be. I don't think he's capable of doing anything. Look, when I debated him, I said, how come, and this was in front of probably not a friend of yours, Chris Wallace. He was the moderator.
Not a friend.
I said, why is it he wants to be Mike, but he doesn't have the talent? It's one of those
bitchy little man.
He wanted to be his father, but he didn't have the talent of his father was great.
He's a little fussy man.
His father interviewed me in 60 Minutes. It was actually a 10. Can you believe it?
No, I totally. His father had talent, at least.
I may have been the only guy that he gave a good 60 Minutes to. He was rough.
Really?
His father was tough. He was great, though. He was great at what he did. But Chris Wallace was so upset. He was guarding this guy who wouldn't do a show, by the way. He wouldn't do. I figured I didn't mind Chris Wallace because Biden wouldn't do a show. And it was very obvious. He kept asking him, but he wouldn't do the show. So I figured he's got to like me. But he came from a different planet.
By shopping at Aldi, you could save hundreds a year on groceries. No sales necessary. No.
Unless Aldi is going to sponsor my channel, I don't want to see an ad from them.
Coupons needed. Just low prices on everything, every day. Now that's something worth celebrating. It's an Aldi thing.
Lots of people need insulin. Like him.
But remember when I asked the question, why is it that the mayor of Moscow's wife is allowed to give you $3.5 million? Don't forget, that was brought up. Now it's brought up all the time, but that was brought up by me long before anyone ever heard of it. I said, the mayor of Moscow's wife giving you $3.5 million. What did you do to deserve $3.5 million? To Biden. And Chris Wallace said, this has nothing to do with the debate. I mean, he
got in the way of the question.
No, it was crazy. And I said, well, wait a minute. He got $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife. Now, people forget that, but if you go back and take a look, you will see. And Chris Wallace didn't want me to ask that question. I said, I think it's a very appropriate question. It turned out to be much more appropriate than people thought.
Amazing. So do you have a preference in, assuming you're the Republican nominee and all goes as you plan it to go, do you have a preference in who you run against?
In many ways, I'd love to run against him because his record's so bad. You know, it's still horrible when you look at inflation and everything else, but others also have very bad records. I mean, California's a bad record. So, you know, should it be Gavin or should it be somebody else? When I look at San Francisco, what's happened to that incredible city? That was one of the greatest cities in the world just a short while ago. And now it's very sad when you look at it. Los Angeles, every city practically, all the Democrat-run cities. You know, Republican-run cities are doing very nicely because they arrest people when you have crimes. And they don't go after political candidates because they think it's good. You know, I mean, it's like been amazing. My poll numbers are the highest I've ever had. But because people understand it.
Can I just ask you, that
Yes.
gets back to my original question. So if the protest didn't work, you got elected anyway.
Yeah.
Impeachment didn't work twice, obviously. Indictment is not working. Your poll numbers go up. When they raided Mar-a-Lago in August of last year, your numbers went up. They can indict you 20 times and you're not gonna lose the Republican primary because of that.
Well,
So,
it
like,
makes it look even more ridiculous. I mean, the 4 indictments, and maybe there'll be more. I don't know. These people are crazy.
But they're counterproductive. So if you chart it out, it's an escalation, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So what's next after, try to put you in prison for the rest of your life? That's not working. So like, don't they have to kill you now?
I think the people of our country don't get enough credit for how smart they are. And I'm not sure I would have said this 10 years ago, but they get it. You know, they really get it.
So Carlson is posing a very important point that all of you should meditate on. Some Americans have this very romanticized idea of the government, that the government can do no wrong and the government is on the side of good. And that's just demonstrably false, demonstrably not true. America's government has done some of the most greatest evils in the history of most of the governments of the contemporary world. There have been governments that have done greater evil than us, of course, but we've done some great evils. Our governments. Our people, I think, are some of the most generous and kind, generally. And I think the history is a testament to that as well. Even during our worst of times, during the slavery eras, during Jim Crow, a lot of people, a lot of common folk still came together under the banner of unity, regardless of their dispositions, their skin color, their religions, and helped each other. In the 1920s, when there were floods of immigrants coming in from Ireland and other folks who were being tarnished and trashed by some people who were nativists, there were still, for every nativist, there was 2-3 other people that were welcoming and helped those folks assimilate to the American experiment. So we're actually quite generous and we're quite accommodating. If you look at American history, most of us are at least. But our government is quite evil, and it has been evil for a very, very long time. And that doesn't change every 4 years. It remains because the administrative state remains every 4 years still and tends to commandeer the resolute desk in the Oval Office and direct it towards its own ends. But when that apparatus is threatened, what do they do to people? Well, they can try to delegitimize you. Psychological warfare. That's what the FBI did with COINTELPRO, these declassified documents that were part of the Church Committee hearings, where the FBI basically admitted that they conducted a series of psychological warfare campaigns against the Vietnam War protesters, against the Southern Leadership Conference, Christian Conference, which was a big civil rights movement organization against Martin Luther King. They actually wrote a letter to him encouraging him to kill himself. The FBI deputy director actually did that at the time. He did that, and that was co-signed and sanctioned by J. Edgar Hoover, all that kind of stuff. They wiretapped him illegally without going through the proper constitutional procedures as well. They killed Fred Hampton, who was a prominent and a socialist. I don't agree with him, but he was a prominent Black Panthers person. The FBI broke into his house dead of night, killed him, traumatized his girlfriend at the time. I mean, I can keep going on and on and on and on and on. Our government is not a stranger to killing its own citizens to get what it wants. So Carlson asking that question is so important because Trump needs to be thinking like this. Anyone who is a serious threat to the establishment needs to be thinking exactly like this. They need to be thinking exactly like this. If I become too powerful, won't I get killed or won't I get whacked or won't something bad happen to me or someone close to me? It's not conspiratorial. It's realistic. If you actually look at the empirical record and you examine our government's track history of whacking dissidents when they got too strong. Or if they don't whack you, they can arrest you. There have been people that have called for the execution, death of Edward Snowden because Edward Snowden revealed the government was doing unconstitutional, illegal activities. People have called for his death. Politicians in America have called for his death because he committed treason. And treason is punishable by what? Death. Julian Assange. Julian Assange simply reported on information that was indispensable for the American people to understand. And he has gone through some of the most harrowing persecutions that any modern journalist in a Western country has gone through. He was strung up in a embassy, the Ecuadorian embassy in London, for almost a decade. New president of Ecuador gets in, says, no, we're not going to do this anymore. And he's thrown to the wolves, the British government. The initial case that drove Julian Assange into that embassy in Sweden, a sexual assault case, which was a false pretense, was dismissed because there's no evidence. So they quite literally created a legal case which drove him out of Sweden, created the pretense for his arrest, and then his eventual persecution, put him in an embassy for so many years, and then eventually left him to be hung out to dry. When the power structure does not like you, they will do whatever they can to make your life a living hell or take it. More politicians that are revolutionary need to think like this. It is the only rational way to think if you're going to be an effective political actor. 2 years ago, I told you that if you said this stuff, you're a conspiracy theorist, you're crazy. But I've looked at the facts. So I'm happy that Tucker was kind of asking him this question. We're going to wrap up here shortly, but let's keep going for a little bit longer.
Get it. When somebody gets indicted, your poll numbers go down. When somebody gets indicted, you announce, ladies and gentlemen, I'll be leaving to spend time with my family and to fight for the rest of my life on this stuff. But you're out of politics. I got indicted 4 times. All trivia, nonsense, bullshit. It's all bullshit. It's horrible when you look and you look at what they're doing. The boxes hoax, I'm covered by the Presidential Records Act. I'm allowed to do exactly that. He's not covered, and he's got 25 times the number of boxes, and he's got them stored in Chinatown. He's got them stored in a flimsy garage underneath his Corvette at Penn. And by the way, at Penn, he gets millions of dollars. China pays this guy millions of dollars. See, I think he's the most corrupt president we've ever had. And he also has the distinction of being the most incompetent. And I believe both. I mean, he's both incompetent and corrupt.
So
and
who
I
is running the
actually
government?
believe he's compromised because China knows so much about him. They know where the money comes from. They know where it is, who paid it, and they probably paid it. Well, they do pay Penn, and he gets $1 million. I think he takes $999,000 because, keeps it a little bit under $1 million, like by $1. But he, in many ways, is a Manchurian candidate. We have a Manchurian.
There's no limit to your savings right now at Haverty's because you can save $100 off every $1,000 you spend as your wish
Candidate, and he's afraid to tell Russia to get out of Cuba. He's afraid to tell China to get out of Cuba. He's afraid. China now is building, think of this. China is building military installations in Cuba. The Cuban population of Miami is not too happy because they're never going to be able to go back. And you don't even hear about it. And the worst culprit is the press, the media, because normally, you know, when I first heard that China's building installations in Cuba, and installations means military installations. Okay, you know, they said just some communication. They did that on the islands with Japan. They took the island, they started this massive construction, and they told everybody, including the Japanese have to be very careful. They told everybody that this is a housing development. They're going to build a housing development. And I said, how come the runway is 20,000 feet long? You know, private jets need 4,000 feet. They don't need 20,000 feet. The big ones need 20,000 feet. They don't even need 20. And I looked at the runway. I said, that's the largest runway ever built, both in width and length, for housing development. There's nobody that has a plane that big that you would have a runway that's
Why
that's
is
for
China
testing.
allowed to conduct imperialism in our hemisphere?
Well, yeah, and it's far beyond Cuba. It's all over South America.
Yeah, in the Caribbean.
So we built a thing called the Panama Canal. We lost 35,000 people to the mosquito, you know, malaria.
Yeah.
We lost 35,000 people building. We lost 35,000 people because of the mosquito. Vicious. They had to build under nets. It was one of the true great wonders of the world. As he said, one of the 9 wonders of the world. No, it was one of the 7. It happened a little while ago, you know. It says 9 wonders of the world. You could make 9 wonders. He would have been better off if he stuck with the 9 and just said, yeah, I think it's 9. But this is one of the true 7 wonders of the world. And you take a look at the Panama Canal. It was such an incredible engineering marvel. We sold it under Jimmy Carter. We sold it to Panama for $1. The following day, they quadrupled the amount of money that ships had to pay to get across. They didn't lose one ship. And now they've made it much bigger, and now they've widened it. They've doubled it, right? They've more than doubled it. And it's one of the most profitable things. Any time it's just incredible, right? We gave it away for $1. China now controls it. They actually control the Panama Canal. They run it, they control it. And we shouldn't let that happen. And we can't let China be in Cuba. And they'll get out. If I'm president, they'll get out. Because I had a very good relationship with President Xi, but he respected this country. He respected me. And he'll get out.
So there's some wisdom here. Again, Trump's not going to specify, I don't think. But there's something that I take away from this. So Cuba. Let's talk about U.S.-Cuba policy for a little bit. So ever since the rise of the Castros, the overthrow of the dictator, which was propped up by the United States before the Castros, and the communist Cuban revolution, America has been at odds with Cuba over the past 70, 80, probably even longer than that years. The Castro family has been this regime in Cuba, which has kept a stranglehold over the economy, over the people, and created a new generation of Cuban Americans that are actually quite conservative, one of the most conservative ethnic minority demographics in the entire country, who fled from Castro's brutal regime, where they were literally one of the examples of Castro's brutality. Castro would tell Cubans, hey, you want to go out and see America, you want freedom, go over there. He would point them in a direction. And when the people who wanted to leave the island walked towards that area, they actually stepped on landmines, on minefields, and they'd be blown up. So Castro was just an unthinkable kind of evil. When he died, I remember a few years ago, I wasn't sad at all. In fact, I said it's about time. That kind of evil, unfortunately, never dies. It lives on in other people. So we can't celebrate too heavily. but he was a foul person. He was terrible. He was a terrible human being. Like, seriously. And the fact that you have leftists like Bernie Sanders and Justin Trudeau who praise Castro and praise him silently is just absolutely disgusting. Sanders said, well, Cuba has a universal healthcare system. They have a good healthcare system. I'm like, really? Most Cubans live a poverty-stricken, subsistence lifestyle given to them by the Marxist government. Now, having said that, I mentioned that thing called the liberal international global hegemony earlier. Well, that's the same hegemony, which again likes to pit America against other people on the backs of economic interest. And that same hegemony has said, because Cuba is a communist country, it is incorrect for America, it is wrong for America to trade with them. This has left the Cuban people in a state where a lot of their technology was in the 1960s. Now, the embargo has softened. We've obviously opened up relations with Cuba over the past decade. The 2010s is actually a really revolutionary moment for the United States' relationship with Cuba. But we're still not all the way there yet. The Americans can now travel to Cuba, which was not a thing, 12 years ago. They can now travel to Cuba. But that drove Cuba into the arms of countries like Venezuela, countries like China, countries like Russia. The countries that are alienated from the geopolitical Western order will ultimately build a home amongst each other. This is why Saudi Arabia is currently investing in other currencies, getting away from the United States dollar. Because even though Saudi Arabia has a deep connection with the Western order because of oil, Saudi Arabia doesn't really share the values of the West. They don't. The House of Saud abuses people all the time and abuses trust and relationships as well. So they're always looking out for themselves. I know this seems weird that I'm talking about foreign policy because I don't talk about it on our channel at all, but I do a lot of research, so I'm just trying to give my insights here. And so whenever you have a political order that excludes certain countries and alienates them in rhetorical ways. Listen to Marco Rubio. Whenever Marco Rubio says, we got to fight communist Cuba, as if it's like the 1960s, then you're going to get bad actors take advantage of that. If you really want to drive China from our hemisphere, you end all restrictions on U.S.-Cuba relationships, and you allow free trade to flow forth once again. Not only will you improve the economic condition of Cubans who had absolutely nothing to do with the brutality and the inanity and the foolishness of the Castro regime, you also, by osmosis, teach them the values of Americanism and freedom by allowing them to see its material spoils and its material wealth literally flow into their lives. This is the problem with these conceited geopolitical engineers that quite literally try to engineer hegemony over nations America doesn't like. The problem is it doesn't understand that you can't foist ideas upon people with an arsenal of democracy, as Mike Pence said, or Nikki Haley said. The best way to show someone the merits of an idea is to allow them to experience the idea in their own life in real time. This idea that we can export democracy by freezing the economy, by sanctioning countries we don't like. Hello, Russia. Why do you think inflation got so bad? Yes, it was due to oddities that came from a post-COVID economy that had just returned from being shut down. Sure, yes, but it was also due primarily to the artificial shutdown of the economy that happened when the United States, over a year ago, launched a massive multinational sanctions package against Vladimir Putin, against his oligarchs, many of which had a lot invested into certain areas of the United States economy, and then shut down the global economy on that basis, messed up supply chain routes, and therefore made the inflation problem worse. It's that simple. Russia was a big contributor of oil to us. We sanctioned them. We stopped buying for them. Americans' gas prices go up. Inflations go up. Americans suffer because of some odd geopolitical agenda hashed up in the Atlantic Council by these foul, conceited engineers. The same thing is happening in Cuba. And I'm trying to understand why people can't see this. The same conceit is going to lead us into something worse than economic standstill, perhaps even a world war. I'm not even an expert on foreign policy, and yet I can see this. So why can't experts on foreign policy see this? Because their condition does not compel them towards this truth. Oh, isn't that interesting? Meditate on that for a second. Their condition does not compel them towards this truth. Think on that for a second. I promise you, you're not going to find this commentary anywhere else, guys. I'm not trying to sound conceited because I'm not. I'm a very humble person. But you're not going to find this level of fire and fruit and water and nourishment from anyone. Not who's still living. Maybe people that have died a long time ago, like William F. Buckley, folks like that, Christopher Hitchens. Hitchens, oh my God, he wrote extensively about this issue, about foreign policy and the national war. And you can find a lot of fruit from him. But a lot of people don't care about this stuff. It's so important you get this. It's so important. All right, let's keep going. We're almost done. Again, we won't go through the whole debate, the whole interview. We'll go through some of it. We're almost at the halfway mark. And so, because I just, sleep is, of course, very important. And also, I kind of want to debrief with my Discord community as well a little bit after this. So, we're going to keep going for like a few more minutes, and then I'm going to shut this show down. Again, if you haven't yet, like this stream, comment on this stream, subscribe to the channel if you're new here, join our Discord, help being part of our pencil community. It really helps me get going. We're going to be right back tomorrow as well with videos. We're doing a video on why we shouldn't comply, do not comply tomorrow. You guys already know what that's all about. Then we got a video about the link between progressivism, the philosophy, and the crime wave in cities. We are going to completely and utterly overturn the Overton window. We're going to literally cause revolution of the mind. I am so excited because what we saw tonight with our viewership on that debate stream is a small glimmer of things to come. A small glimmer of things to come that I believe. I'm excited, guys. I'm really excited. So let's get going.
And we can't let them run the Panama Canal. We built the Panama Canal. Should have never been given to Panama. We should have had it. But we gave it for $1. Think of it. They quadrupled. In one day, they lifted the fees, which are, pretty big for these massive ships to go through, right? Rather than going around the Cape and to all the tremendous storms, such beauty, when it's beautiful stuff. But you didn't want to get caught in those storms. Those were storms that wiped out the biggest ships. And we go through the Panama Canal. We built it, and we gave it away for $1. Think of that. How stupid are we?
I chose Wix for my business because of its massive scope for functionality and freedom of creation.
Done the stupidest things in this country. And now we have a president that can't put two sentences together, can't speak, can't walk, can't talk. I don't think he gets to the starting gate, but these people do miracles. I mean, he ran out of his basement, and you got away with that one because of COVID, so he sort of got away with it. They cheated on the election. But you have people that are very smart, but they're fascists and they're radical left lunatics, and they're destroying our country with the all-electric cars and the windmills all over the place, which, by the way, don't work, and they're most of them made in China for the most part.
Okay, we'll close on this point. Environmental cultism is both a national security threat and a moral threat to the American public. Environmental cultism wishes to place American energy needs into a set of rather unreliable and oftentimes foreign-made technologies that will leave us as it stands right now in a worse place than our current sources, national gas, shale, coal, do. Or nuclear, even. Nuclear would be the best. But, of course, the environmental cult's also stopping that by invoking imagery of nuclear holocaust, which actually, if you look at that, many in the environmental cult are actually stoking the possibility of nuclear holocaust by supporting the war in Ukraine. But we don't want to talk about that, do we? How these things kind of overlap. And so he's correct about that, 100%. And it's interesting because if you look at environmentalism as a philosophy, and I got a video on this coming out too very soon. Environmentalism is literally an attempt to socially engineer human society to fit a primitive way of being and living. Human progress defies primitive man. Primitive man was our beginning stage. It was the stage before man had learned to assume mastery over the earth and bend it towards his creative will. Well, these environmentalists, the really primitivists, wish to displace man from nature, allow nature to overtake and direct man's own destiny. By nature, I don't mean existence or human nature. I mean like literally the trees, the sun, the rain, all that kind of stuff. And then let man be a slave to these kind of forces. But you can't have a free exercise. You can't have a sound exercise of free will if you become a slave to all of these things that could hamper your progress and your development. Imagine if man had never built civilization and had remained bound to the shrubs of the forest floors, had remained bound to huts and wooden houses, had remained bound to that campfire, which was the only source of illumination in that particular area. Imagine if man had done that. I don't even want to imagine what humanity would have looked like in that case. Yes, we should be stewards of our environment, but we shouldn't worship the environment, and we shouldn't think that primitivism is automatically a better form of existence because its aesthetic seems a little bit more acceptable to some people who have different premises. So we'll stop there. We got it halfway. We got to 24 minutes. It's 48 minutes. We got halfway. So I want to thank all of you guys for joining me tonight. I want to thank all of you guys for watching me. I want to thank all of you guys for joining me for the debate if you were here earlier. My only request is that you guys like this video, you comment on this video, you share this video, and also hopefully you'll be watching my videos tomorrow, which will come out. One video will come out tomorrow, next video will come out the other day. I'm really inspired. I'm really excited. I'm really motivated to keep going. We are going to do something great, guys. When we do, I'm going to come back to this video. I'm going to clip this part, and I'm going to paste it. This is going to be a first recognition of what is to come. So, and by the way, on the interview, it's typical Trump, anti-establishment stuff. Nothing shocked me here so far. Maybe something in the minutes remaining would shock me, but I doubt it. So, he's being himself, and so great for him. All right, guys. Love you guys so much, and please stay pensive. I'll see you all. Join the Discord because I'll be there tonight in a little bit. So join the Discord if you want to. But other than that, you guys stay pensive. And good night, everyone. You have a nice day.